In the great frozen land of the Yukon, where the silence was deep and the snow stretched as far as the eye could see, a man was walking alone on a trail. It was morning, but there was no sun, only a pale gray sky. The sun hadn't shown itself for days, and it wouldn't return for weeks. The cold was sharp, hard, and bitter. It was 75 degrees below zero. That's the kind of cold that bites straight through clothes and skin. But the man didn't feel afraid. He was new to this land and didn't yet understand how deadly the cold could be. He wasn't foolish, just confident. He believed that if he kept moving and followed the trail, he would be fine. His beard was coated with ice from his breath, and his cheeks stung, but he hardly noticed. His thick coat, mittens and moccasins kept his body warm, and he walked fast, thinking only of reaching the camp where his friends were waiting. At his heels trotted a big husky dog, grey with a trace of wolf in its blood. The dog didn't understand numbers or temperatures, but it felt the cold in its bones. Instinct told it something the man didn't know. This was no ordinary cold. This was a cold that could kill. The dog wanted to stop, curl up, and wait out the weather. But it followed the man because that was what it had always done. They followed the trail across the wide frozen Yukon River, through a land of snowy pines and white hills. The man knew there were hidden dangers, places where the ice covering the stream might be thin, where a step in the wrong spot could break through, so he watched the ground carefully, avoiding patches that looked suspicious. Hours passed. The world stayed silent except for the crunch of his boots and the soft sound of the dog's paws. The man felt proud. The cold was fierce, but he was handling it. His nose and fingers were numb, but he walked steadily. At 10 o'clock he stopped to eat his lunch. He sat down, took off his mitten and reached for a biscuit. But the instant his bare fingers touched the air, they started to freeze. He fumbled with the food, and his hands turned stiff and red. He couldn't feel them. He had to build a fire. He found some dry twigs and moss, lit a match, and soon had a small flame going under the shelter of a spruce tree. The fire crackled and warmed his fingers, bringing life back to them. The dog lay near the fire, its fur steaming in the heat. For a while all was well. The man ate his biscuit, felt the warmth, and believed he had everything under control. But the fire wouldn't last forever. He had many miles to go, so he kicked snow over the flames and stood up. The dog followed as he stepped back onto the trail. Then it happened. Without warning, he broke through a patch of thin ice. He sank knee-deep into icy water. In seconds, his foot and lower leg were soaked. Fear gripped him, not panic, but sharp, serious fear. He knew what this meant. Wet clothes in this cold could freeze solid. He needed another fire, and quickly. He moved fast, tearing twigs from the bushes, scraping moss from tree trunks. His hands were cold again. He dropped his matches, picked them up, and finally got one to light. A small flame caught on the moss. He bent low, blowing gently, feeding the fire with tiny sticks. It grew stronger. Then, disaster. Snow from the branches above, loosened by the heat of the fire, tumbled down. It landed right on the flames, smothering them completely. The fire was gone. Smoke curled up from the wet ashes. The man stared at the spot in disbelief. He had no time to waste. He had to try again. His fingers were clumsy, almost useless. He tried to strike another match, but his hands were shaking. He dropped the match, He tried again, holding the match between his teeth, scraping it on his leg. It lit, but the wind blew it out. Desperate, he lit an entire bunch of matches at once. The flame flared up and burned his skin, but he didn't care. He tried to bring the flame to the twigs, but his fingers were too frozen. The twigs didn't catch. He felt the fear rise in him, stronger now, colder than the wind. His fingers were like sticks of wood. He could no longer bend them. He couldn't build a fire. His eyes turned to the dog. The idea came to him in a flash. If he could kill the dog, he could use its warm body to heat his hands, to survive just a little longer. He called the dog gently, sweetly, and the dog came, trusting him. But when the man tried to grab it, his arms were weak and shaking. The dog pulled back, surprised. Then it saw something in the man's eyes, something strange. The dog backed away. It was no longer sure of him. The man sat in the snow, exhausted. He looked at his hands. They hung useless at his sides. He couldn't feel his feet. He tried to stand but stumbled. He had to keep moving or freeze, so he began to run. He ran along the trail blindly. His heart pounded. His breath came in gasps. He felt warm again, but it wasn't real warmth. It was the trick the cold plays just before the end. His legs grew heavy, his chest ached. He stopped, fell, and tried to rise again, but his body wouldn't answer. He knew then that he was going to die. He thought of the old man from Sulphur Creek who had warned him, never travel alone in the Yukon when it's 50 below. The man had laughed at that advice, but now in the snow, with frozen hands and feet, he understood. He wasn't angry. He was calm. He would meet death with dignity. He sank into the snow and rested. He no longer felt pain. He felt sleepy. He let his eyes close and dreamed of warm fires, of his friends waiting for him, of being safe. The dog watched. It waited. When the man didn't move, the dog whined. It crept closer and sniffed. The man lay still. The dog sat for a long time watching. The sky darkened. The cold deepened. Finally, the dog raised its nose and howled, a long, lonely cry that echoed through the silent land. Then, turning slowly, the dog trotted down the trail, guided by its instincts toward the camp it knew, where warmth and safety waited.